everybody.
Hi. So, Morgan, we are at another location.
We are at what was originally, who was it, the Waukesha
O'Laughlin Stone Company.
Yes.
It is a quarry. It is now a different quarry. Morgan falling down the hill.
I am.
Anyway, so we are not going to give the current name of it, but it used to be the O'Laughlin Stone Company back in the day, and we are going way back, over 100 years back, in fact, to tell this story.
Actually, 100 years to the year.
Yes, this year. So this happened in March
8th of 1921.
And what we are talking about is the still unsolved case of what has been dubbed Little Lord Fauntleroy of Waukesha, Wisconsin.
Yes. On the morning of March 8th, 1921, a worker for the O'Laughlin quarry was out on a walk, and he saw something very disturbing in the quarry pond. What he found was the body of a little boy between 5 and 7 years old floating in the water.
Right, so he called the police, the sheriffs came, they pulled this boy's body out of the water. At first, they had no idea how long this kid had been in the water. They said it could have been anywhere from a few days to up to 6 months,
yes,
they estimated at the time.
And it's strange because he's never been identified. His clothing, I want to say, is dated. We'll give you more on that, too.
Yes, so he was dubbed Little Lord Fauntleroy because there was a very popular children's book at a time, sort of a rags to riches story that really caught on. It had an illustration of this kid that was dressed in a very
Victorian upper class outfit.
Yeah, so very fancy clothing. And this Little Lord Fauntleroy is very excessively polite, so they dubbed this kid Little Lord Fauntleroy because they had no idea what his name was.
And he had expensive clothing on.
Yes, very fancy, very expensive clothing. Not exactly current clothing that kids would wear at the time. And even though the book did inspire fashion at the time, it predated this case.
They originally thought that this little boy had drowned. The coroner at the time found very little water in his lungs. What he did find was a wound to the back of his head.
Yes.
Initial cause of death was ruled as blunt force trauma.
Right, so originally they thought maybe this kid had been left unsupervised, wandered around, and had drowned, but that was clearly not the case. This kid was murdered.
Yes.
And in addition to that, they were desperate to find out who this child was, so they actually took his body and displayed him at the funeral home and opened it up to the public.
They say like 600 people came to look at this little boy.
People came through.
They printed a sketch of him in the paper too.
Yes, and we'll put the sketch here.
Yeah. Shaggy blonde hair is how he was described.
Brown eyes,
and fair complexion, I think.
Yes, and they estimated, around 5, 6, 7 at the most years old.
No malnourishment, no other signs of abuse or anything on him, or poverty.
Just the way he was dressed, and despite that many people coming through the funeral home, nobody was able to give any clues as to his identity.
So there was also another theory that this little boy had been abducted from a wealthy family from a different location and dumped here. Now, another quarry worker came forward and said about 5 weeks before they had found this young man, which I found some
February 6th, I think.
Yep, so it was in some of the police reports, February 6th, which is almost a month. Actually, there was a woman in a red sweater asking this man if he had seen a little boy running around here.
Yeah, she was crying. She was with another gentleman.
Yep. So then the thought came, well, they had let the kid out to play while they were having hanky-panky in the car, and he got out and he drowned. But again, that was disproven with the coroner's initial autopsy.
So there's some other theories which we're going to cover again soon.
Yeah.
But we just wanted to give you the basic outline of this case, and it fascinates me because to this day it is unsolved. Hey, we're back here to talk about Waukesha's very own Little Lord Fauntleroy.
Yes.
And Morgan, so one interesting thing, when they were trying to figure out how long this body had been in the quarry, they ended up finding somebody who identified the sweater that this kid was wearing. He was wearing a gray sweater.
A shopkeeper came forward and said that he had sold that set of clothing in January.
Yes, so there was a sale at the shop in January, and he identified it as having been sold then. So this kid could not have been in the water, they're dead before January.
If that is true. And okay, so this case has opened up more questions for me, and Celeste kind of warned me that I was going to go down a rabbit hole here.
Yes.
So, do you want me to tell you what I have discovered?
Yes, because this case just fascinates me for years.
So, he was also listed as wearing a pair of munsing underwear as well, undergarments. I'll have to look up where those were made, but those were only made until a time period, a typical time period, especially the style that he was wearing. The gray sweater, the dark gray sweater that he was wearing as well. Now, mind you, I've already pulled the catalogs for the Bradley Knitting Company, which was on the inside of the tag. That was inside the sweater. 2021, or not, I'm so sorry, we are in 2021, 100 years ago, in 1921, that sweater was not in their catalog. It was not in the storefronts. It was also not in the 1920 edition either. I could not find it. Now, the Bradley Knitting Company at the time was a factory. It was an assembly line, so there were several sweaters of the same kind that had been made. You know, you make so many of them in production, and that's it. They were not handmade. It's not something grandma made you and you wore. No, this sweater is not in these catalogs, so I'm going to keep pulling until I find it, because if he died in 1921, then there's no...
Right, and so if they were on sale in 1921, then there's a chance that they were actually there earlier.
Yes. And the leather patent shoes, too, that this little boy was wearing, I got to find those, too, because they stopped making those after a certain time period as well. We're coming into the era here of the Roaring 20s, obviously. Clothing is getting less. Shoes are becoming more efficient to wear. They don't wear out as much, things like that.
Right, and we're trying to figure out...
We're coming into a recession.
There's much mystery surrounding this case, because even more, they said for years after this kid's death, once a year, a heavily veiled woman would come and leave flowers at his grave. So they never knew who she was, if she was somebody that actually knew who this kid is or not. She could have just been somebody that developed an interest in the case like we have.
Now here's where it also gets strange too. Okay, so after they did a viewing of the body and everything, they sent him to another funeral home to be prepared for burial. A local woman named Minnie, took a personal interest in this, and she headlined the fundraising to get this little boy buried. And the speculation is that it was her that was coming every year.
That could be, we don't know.
Yes. I mean, if she paid for him to be buried,
right? That's a good chance. But why the veil? So if it's somebody that
time period respect, but
I mean,
again, the veil,
but it's also weird,
it was her. Yeah.
If it's somebody that doesn't want to be known but still wants to pay respect.
And speaking of the woman coming every year, at the funeral service, at the burial, somebody had carved into the top of the small white casket, "Our darling."
Yes.
So very strange right there.
And now, is this, it could mean, he became the darling of the entire town. It's gained a lot of interest in the town. People wanted to find out who this kid was. And in fact, there was in the late 1940s, a motion put to exhume the body and see if they could maybe identify him. And the decision finally came down to, no, we are going to let this boy rest in peace. But I'm curious, if they exhumed it now, would they be able to get any DNA?
Bone marrow, I think they would be able to. And if he was embalmed, they should be able to still get some tissue samples.
Because I'm so curious to find this boy and bring him to his family, at least bury him under a name.
Yes, me too. Like, that's now where I'm like, oh man, this baby needs a name. Like,
but there was a possible child that they thought it might be.
So here's what I have discovered. In 1949, a man came forward making statements that was his son. Homer Lemay was this man's son's name. The man was named Edmund Lemay. And he said that he had gone on a trip. He had left his 6-year-old son with some family friends out of Chicago named the Nortons. The Nortons took Homer to Argentina.
Yes.
Where he was presumably killed in an automobile accident, and the family that he was staying with sent the newspaper clipping of the accident back to Edmund.
But Edmund wasn't able to produce this newspaper clipping.
No, he wasn't able to produce the newspaper clipping. The detective, who is still alive at this point, that was put on the case, actually went to Argentina to try and collaborate this story. He couldn't find anything. These people down there were like, what?
Yeah, that never happened. So we have no idea if this kid was actually killed in an automobile accident.
Where it gets even stranger. Homer Lemay is still missing, I guess. I don't know. It
Yeah.
was never determined what happened to this young man named Homer, and if he even existed. That's the other thing too. They couldn't find birth certificates on this boy.
But we have his picture, and I will put
Yes.
it here as a possible identity of our Lord Fauntleroy.
Mrs. Lemay. Now, Edmund Lemay said that his wife went and committed suicide not long after this young man was found in the quarry here. And he said that she had killed herself in the quarry pond. Well, O'Loughlin Quarry, they set dynamite down there because sometimes when you do the fracking or the dynamites and stuff too, it does bring stuff to the surface
And
because
they-
it loosens everything up.
Yeah.
Nothing came up. They dredged that pond. They dragged it. They had divers down there. They never found another body at the bottom of this quarry.
Yes, and there's also speculation that the woman in the red sweater that had been crying, she
Was
might have been the
Mrs.
person,
Lemay.
that killed herself there. But
Yeah.
they never found any evidence
Yeah,
that
that-
anyone killed themselves there.
That couple was never seen again. They were seen leaving in a Ford.
Yes.
Ford car at the time.
Gone.
Never seen again, never heard from again, nothing. Now, Edmund Lemay also got caught forging his wife's signature on pay stubs. We still don't know where she is.
Yes, so this is a whole, it unlocks just one unsolved mystery, unlocks a whole another mystery.
now
So
have
we
a
are
missing
so
woman.
far down this rabbit hole.
Yes.
Like, was it Homer? So in I believe it was 49 as well.
49,
They
yep.
said this may be Homer, but we don't know.
Yes.
So I would love someday, I know they should let, there's an argument for letting it rest in peace, but I personally, I hate things that are unsolved. I want to solve it. So if this is ever, cases open up again and they exhume the body and they are able to get any kind of DNA, I would love to be able to figure out who the DNA relatives are and who this little boy was.
And then I want to know now what happened to Edmund Lemay's wife, possibly Homer Lemay's mother, if both of them are missing. Like that's, and there was no reports of Homer going missing either, which would be strange if you're falsifying a story about a car
and that
accident.
whole Argentina thing's just weird. Like, why would they take him to out? It doesn't check out. It doesn't make much sense.
Well, 49, you got to figure that's just after World War II.
Right.
We've got war criminals escaping to South America where they will never be found. So it just, it goes with the time period.
Like they had a couple other, maybe it's this kid's, but then it turned out no. Like there was another couple who said, oh, maybe these two kids were kidnapped by their dad.
Oh, they were found live and well in Chicago.
Exactly. But then later they're like, no, these two kids have been found and it can't be. So they don't have the kid to go with our body.
Yeah. And now with all the ancestry, DNA, family tree,
there should be a way. There should be a link. Yeah.
Yes, you should be able to. There's got to be living relatives. There has to be.
And I want to know so bad.
I do too, because it's a child on top of that, and it's a local unsolved cold case.
Yes.
So I mean, and as usual, when we did the Kenosha cold case here with the torso, if anybody has any information, it's 100 years now.
Yes, it's a long
everybody's
time,
dead and
but
gone. If you
still
know
want to
anything,
know,
or you heard anything down through the generations, which I'm sure, because there will always be talk of things like that. Let us know. Like,
please.
Let's put this kid to rest, please.
Here is the gravesite in the nearby, Prairie. What was it? The cemetery's name, Morgan? Oh wow.
This is the Prairie Home Cemetery.
Prairie Home Cemetery. Says unknown boy found in O'Loughlin Quarry, Waukesha, Wisconsin, March 8th, 1921. And this is his resting place. He is not buried under any kind of name. So yeah, that's something I would love to change.
Hold on, I'm trying to see how far this hole goes.